I smoothed my black dress one last time as I walked into Le Bernardin, the same restaurant where Nathan proposed to me 5 years ago. Tonight was supposed to be our anniversary dinner. I had spent hours getting ready, choosing the perfect outfit, hoping maybe we could fix whatever had gone wrong between us. The hostess led me to our usual table by the window. I sat down and checked my phone. Nathan was 20 minutes late, but that wasn't unusual anymore. He'd been working so much lately, always busy with meetings and phone calls that seemed to happen at the strangest hours. I ordered a glass of wine and waited, watching couples at other tables laugh and hold hands. That used to be us. I remembered our first anniversary here, how Nathan couldn't stop staring at me, how he said I was the most beautiful woman in the room. Now I couldn't remember the last time he really looked at me. The restaurant door opened, and I saw Nathan walking in. My heart lifted for a moment, but then I noticed he wasn't alone. Thomas and Brandon, his best friends from college, were with him, and behind them walked a woman I recognized from Nathan's office Christmas party, Cassie, his secretary. She had long blonde hair and was wearing a tight red dress that cost more than most people's rent. I frowned. This was supposed to be our private dinner. Why were they here? Nathan spotted me and walked over with a huge smile on his face. But something about that smile made my stomach twist. It wasn't the warm smile I fell in love with. It was cold, almost cruel. "Victoria," he said loudly, loud enough for other tables to hear. "So glad you could make it to our little celebration?" "Celebration?" I asked, confused. "Nathan, what's going on? Why is everyone here?" Thomas and Brandon pulled up chairs around our small table. Cassie sat down right next to Nathan, so close their shoulders touched. She was smiling too, but her eyes were hard as diamonds. "Well, sweetheart," Nathan said, reaching into his jacket pocket, "I have a little anniversary gift for you." He pulled out a thick envelope and placed it on the table in front of me. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were legal papers with big bold letters at the top. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Divorce papers. I stared at them, reading the same words over and over, but they didn't make sense. This had to be some kind of joke. A terrible, cruel joke. "Nathan," I whispered, "what is this?" "It's your freedom, baby," he said, putting his arm around Cassie's shoulders. "And mine too." Thomas raised his wine glass high in the air. "Gentlemen," he announced, "let's toast to Nathan's new beginning." "To his new queen," Brandon shouted, grinning at Cassie. "To the woman who actually deserves him," Thomas added. They clinked their glasses together while I sat there, frozen. Other people in the restaurant were starting to stare. The couple at the next table looked shocked. A woman near the bar had her hand over her mouth. Cassie leaned forward and smiled at me. "Don't look so sad, Victoria. You'll find someone eventually. Someone more your speed." The men laughed, actually laughed. Like my pain was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. I looked down at the divorce papers again. My name was already typed in. All the legal language was there. Nathan had planned this. He'd planned to humiliate me in public, in the place where we got engaged, on our anniversary. My hands stopped shaking. Something cold and calm settled over me like a blanket. I picked up the pen Nathan had placed next to the papers. "You want me to sign these?" I asked quietly. "Right here, right now," Nathan said. "Let's make it official." I signed my name carefully on every line that needed it. Then I folded the papers neatly and handed them back to Nathan. "Thank you," I said, standing up slowly. "Thank you all for making this so much easier than I expected." I smiled at each of them, one by one. Nathan looked confused. Thomas and Brandon stopped laughing. Cassie's confident smirk started to fade. "You have no idea what you've just done," I said softly. 6 months earlier, I was still living in a dream. Or maybe it was more like sleepwalking through my own life. I thought Nathan and I were just going through a rough patch. All marriages have them, right? That's what I told myself every morning when I woke up to an empty bed because he'd already left for work. It was a Tuesday morning in March when everything changed. Nathan had rushed out the door, mumbling something about an early meeting with investors. He forgot his phone on the kitchen counter, buzzing next to his half-eaten toast. I almost didn't look. I should have just called him to come back for it. But the phone kept buzzing, and I could see text messages lighting up the screen. What if it was an emergency? The first message made my blood freeze. Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Same hotel as always? C. Then another one. Last night was incredible. I love you so much. And another. When are you going to tell her? I'm tired of hiding. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. C. Cassie, his secretary, the sweet young woman who always smiled at me during office parties and asked about my work. I sat down at our kitchen table, the same table where Nathan and I used to have breakfast together every morning, reading the news and planning our weekends. Now I couldn't remember the last time we'd done that. The messages went back months. Months of, I love you and I miss you, and plans to meet at hotels. There were photos too. Pictures of them at restaurants I'd never been to, holding hands across candlelit tables. Pictures of her wearing jewelry I'd never seen before. Expensive jewelry. I scrolled through their conversations, each message like a knife in my chest. They talked about me sometimes. Nathan called me clueless and boring. Cassie said I was in the way and asked when he was going to get rid of the dead weight. But the worst part wasn't the cruel words. It was how happy they seemed. How in love. The way Nathan used to talk to me before we got married, before life got complicated. I heard Nathan's car in the driveway. Quickly, I put his phone back exactly where he'd left it and went upstairs to get ready for work. When he came back in, I was brushing my teeth in our bathroom. Forgot my phone, he called out. Thanks for not snooping, babe. I watched him in the mirror as he grabbed his phone from downstairs. He was smiling as he read his messages. Actually smiling. Then he came upstairs and kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. Have a good day at work, he said. I'll be late tonight. Big client dinner. Another lie. I knew exactly where he'd be. That day at my marketing firm, I couldn't concentrate on anything. My assistant kept asking if I was feeling okay. I kept thinking about all the signs I'd missed. The late nights that had become normal, the way Nathan's phone was always face down on tables, how he'd started working out and buying new clothes, the credit card bills with charges at restaurants and hotels I'd never been to. I'd made excuses for everything. Nathan was working hard to build his real estate business. He was stressed. He needed space. I was being a supportive wife by not asking too many questions. What an idiot I'd been. That evening, I sat in our living room waiting for Nathan to come home from his client dinner. I'd spent the day thinking, planning. I couldn't just confront him. He'd lie, make excuses, maybe even blame me. And then what? A messy divorce where he'd probably already hidden assets and made me look like the crazy, jealous wife? No. I needed to be smarter than that. When Nathan came home at midnight, smelling like perfume that wasn't mine, I pretended to be asleep. He slipped into bed quietly, probably thinking he was being considerate. The next morning, I made him breakfast and coffee, just like always. I smiled and asked about his client dinner. He told me elaborate lies about a difficult investor and a restaurant I could easily check had been closed for renovations. I nodded and believed every word. At least that's what he thought. But inside, I was already planning my next move. The next few weeks turned me into someone I didn't recognize. By day, I was still Victoria, the loving wife, making Nathan's favorite dinners and asking about his work. By night, when he was out with Cassie, I became a detective in my own home. I started with our computer. Nathan had always been careless with passwords, using the same one for everything. Our wedding date. How romantic. I found his email accounts, his banking information, even his social media that I didn't know existed. What I discovered made my stomach sick. Nathan hadn't just been cheating on me. He'd been stealing from me. Our joint savings account, the one we'd built together for our future home, had been slowly drained over the past year. Small amounts at first, then bigger chunks. Money that was supposed to be for our dream house was paying for hotel rooms and expensive dinners with Cassie. But that wasn't the worst part. Nathan had opened credit cards in both our names without telling me. Cards I'd never seen, with balances I'd never agreed to. He'd been living a double life on my credit, and when this all came crashing down, I'd be responsible for every penny. I printed everything. Bank statements, credit reports, email conversations. I bought a small safe and hid it in my office closet at work, filling it with evidence of Nathan's financial betrayal. The emails between Nathan and Cassie were even more revealing than their text messages. They weren't just planning romantic getaways, they were planning my destruction. "She's so trusting," Nathan had written. "She signs whatever I put in front of her. By the time I file for divorce, everything will be protected." Cassie's response made my hands shake. "Good. She doesn't deserve any of it. You've worked so hard and she just sits there in her little marketing job thinking she's so important. Can't wait until she's out of the picture completely." They had it all figured out. Nathan was going to claim I was mentally unstable, that I'd been spending money recklessly and making poor decisions. He'd already started telling people I'd been acting strange and difficult to live with. His mother, Patricia, had been spreading rumors at her country club that I was having a breakdown. I realized Nathan's late nights weren't just about the affair. He'd been meeting with lawyers, financial advisors, even a private investigator to dig up dirt on me. They were building a case to make sure I walked away from our marriage with nothing. But Nathan had made one crucial mistake. He underestimated me. I called in sick to work and spent the day at the public library, researching divorce law and financial fraud. I learned about hidden assets, about how to protect yourself when your spouse is planning to destroy you. I took notes in a composition book, writing everything in code in case Nathan found it. That evening, I made Nathan's favorite meal, lasagna with garlic bread. He came home in a good mood, probably because his day with Cassie had gone well. "This smells amazing, babe," he said, kissing my forehead. "You're the best wife a guy could ask for." The lies came so easily to him now. I wondered if he'd always been this good at deception, or if Cassie had taught him new tricks. "How was your day?" I asked, setting his plate in front of him. "Busy, busy," he said, cutting into the lasagna. "Had to deal with some difficult clients. You know how it is." I nodded sympathetically. "That sounds stressful. Maybe this weekend we could do something together? It feels like we haven't spent quality time in forever." Nathan's face flickered with something. Guilt, maybe, or annoyance. "Actually, I have to work this weekend. Big project deadline." Another lie. I'd already seen his emails with Cassie about their weekend trip to the mountains. "Of course," I said. "Work comes first. I understand." After dinner, Nathan went to his office to catch up on paperwork. I could hear him on the phone, his voice low and intimate, probably telling Cassie about his day, maybe even laughing about how clueless his wife was. I cleaned the kitchen and went upstairs to our bedroom. In my nightstand drawer, hidden under old magazines, was a business card I'd gotten that afternoon. James Morrison, attorney at law, specializing in complex divorce cases. Tomorrow, I would make a call that would change everything. James Morrison's office was nothing like I expected. Instead of intimidating leather chairs and dark wood, it was bright and welcoming, with family photos on his desk and plants by the windows. James himself was younger than I'd imagined, maybe mid-40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Victoria," he said, standing to shake my hand. "I'm so glad you called. Your father was a good friend of mine. He'd be proud of how you're handling this situation." I'd forgotten that James knew my family. My dad had mentioned him years ago. They'd gone to law school together before Dad became a judge. Having that connection made me feel less alone in this mess. "I brought everything," I said, placing a thick folder on his desk. "Bank statements, emails, credit reports, photos. Nathan thinks he's been so clever, but he's left a trail of evidence everywhere." James spent an hour going through my documentation, his expression growing more serious with each page. Finally, he looked up at me with something like admiration. "Victoria, this is incredibly thorough work. Most people don't discover half of what you found, and they certainly don't document it this well." "I'm a marketing executive," I said. "Research and documentation are part of my job. I just never thought I'd be using those skills on my own husband." "Nathan has made several critical errors," James continued. "First, using joint accounts to fund his affair is considered dissipation of marital assets. Second, opening credit cards in your name without your knowledge is fraud. And third," he held up a printed email, These messages show clear intent to defraud you in the divorce proceedings. I felt a surge of satisfaction. So I can protect myself? More than that, we can go on the offensive. James leaned back in his chair. But I need to warn you, this won't be easy. Nathan clearly thinks he holds all the cards. When he realizes you've been building a case against him, he's going to get desperate. Desperate people do unpredictable things. Over the next 2 weeks, James and I worked together to build an ironclad case. We froze the joint accounts Nathan had been draining, which meant his credit cards would start getting declined. We filed paperwork to protect my individual assets and credit. Most importantly, we gathered evidence of Nathan's business dealings. That's when we discovered Nathan's problems went far beyond adultery and financial fraud. His real estate company had been cutting corners on construction projects, using substandard materials and bribing building inspectors. There were safety violations, environmental violations, and tax evasion. Thomas and Brandon weren't just his drinking buddies. They were his partners in a web of illegal business practices. "Your husband has been very busy," James said during one of our meetings. "If the authorities investigate his business, he could face serious criminal charges." Meanwhile, at home, Nathan was getting more careless and more cruel. He'd started bringing Cassie to company events, introducing her as his assistant while I stayed home. His mother, Patricia, had begun calling me directly, making snide comments about how I wasn't making Nathan happy and suggesting I should step aside gracefully. "You know, dear," Patricia said during one particularly nasty phone call, "some women just aren't cut out for marriage. Maybe you should focus on your little career and let Nathan find someone more suitable." I bit my tongue and agreed with her, playing the role of the defeated wife. But inside, I was documenting every conversation, every insult, every attempt to make me feel worthless. Nathan had started staying out all night, not even bothering to make excuses anymore. He'd come home in the morning, shower, change clothes, and leave again. We barely spoke except when he needed something, a shirt ironed, a meal prepared, or papers signed for his business. I signed everything he put in front of me, just like always. But now I was photographing every document first, building evidence of his attempts to hide assets and manipulate our finances. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal when we were around other people. At his company's spring party, I watched Nathan and Cassie dance together while I sat alone at our table. Other wives gave me pitying looks, whispering behind their hands about my situation. But I wasn't the pathetic, abandoned wife they thought I was. I was a woman with a plan, gathering strength and evidence for the battle ahead. Nathan had no idea that his perfect victim was about to become his worst nightmare. The call came on a Monday morning while I was reviewing quarterly reports at work. Nathan's voice was cheerful, almost giddy, which immediately put me on alert. "Hey babe, I've been thinking about our anniversary next week. We should do something special this year." I nearly dropped my coffee. Nathan hadn't remembered our anniversary in 2 years, and now suddenly he wanted to celebrate? "That's wonderful, Nathan. What did you have in mind?" "How about dinner at Le Bernardin? You know, where we got engaged? I'll make reservations for Friday night." My heart should have warmed at the romantic gesture, but something in his tone made my skin crawl. There was an excitement there that didn't match the words, like he was planning a surprise party instead of an intimate dinner. "That sounds perfect," I said carefully. "Just the two of us?" "Of course. Just you and me, celebrating 5 amazing years." After he hung up, I sat staring at my phone. Nathan was planning something, and it wasn't a romantic reconciliation. I called James immediately. "He's going to serve you with divorce papers," James said without hesitation. "At your anniversary dinner, in the place where you got engaged. He thinks it's poetic justice." The cruelty of it took my breath away. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I've seen this before. Narcissists love grand gestures that make them feel powerful. He wants to humiliate you publicly, probably thinks it'll make you more likely to accept whatever settlement he offers." That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I called in sick and drove to Nathan's office building. I parked across the street and waited. Sure enough, at 3 p.m., Nathan and Cassie walked out together, heading to a coffee shop 2 blocks away. I followed them, staying far enough back to avoid being seen. They sat at a corner table, and even from a distance I could see how animated Nathan was. He was gesturing excitedly while Cassie laughed and clapped her hands like he'd just told her the best joke in the world. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I didn't need to. Nathan's body language told me everything. He was planning his big moment, probably describing exactly how he was going to destroy me at our anniversary dinner. That evening, Nathan came home with flowers, cheap grocery store roses, not the expensive arrangements he used to bring me. He was practically bouncing with excitement. "I can't wait for Friday," he said, kissing my cheek. "It's going to be a night you'll never forget." He had no idea how right he was. The rest of the week passed in a blur of final preparations. James and I met every day, going over our strategy. We'd already filed my divorce petition, but we were holding it back, waiting for the perfect moment to serve Nathan. "The key is timing," James explained. "Let him think he's won, let him get comfortable, and then we strike." I spent Wednesday afternoon at the bank, moving my personal assets to a new account Nathan didn't know about. I also stopped by my office and had a long conversation with my boss about taking some time off. I had vacation days saved up, and I had a feeling I was going to need them. Thursday night, Nathan was so excited he could barely sit still during dinner. He kept checking his phone and grinning to himself. At one point, I caught him texting someone, probably Cassie, probably sharing his anticipation for tomorrow's big show. "You seem happy," I said, cutting into my chicken. "Just looking forward to tomorrow night," he said. "I have a feeling it's going to change everything." "I hope so," I replied, and I meant it. That night, after Nathan fell asleep, I went to my home office and opened my laptop one last time. I had recordings of Nathan's phone calls, screenshots of his emails, and documentation of every lie he'd told me over the past 6 months. Everything was organized, labeled, and ready to be presented. I also had something Nathan didn't know about, a small recording device that James had helped me obtain. Tomorrow night, when Nathan thought he was delivering his crushing blow, I'd be capturing every word for the divorce proceedings. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror before bed. Tomorrow, the woman staring back at me would be free, not just from Nathan, but from the lies, the pretending, and the constant feeling that I wasn't good enough. Nathan wanted to make our anniversary unforgettable. He was about to get his wish. The silence in the restaurant was deafening. Nathan's triumphant smile was frozen on his face as he stared at me, clearly confused by my calm reaction. Thomas and Brandon had stopped mid-toast, their wine glasses suspended in the air. Cassie's confident smirk was wavering. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, setting it on the table where everyone could see it. The red recording light was blinking. "Thank you all for that wonderful performance," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I hope you don't mind that I recorded every word." Nathan's face went white. "Victoria, what are you—" "Shh," I interrupted, holding up one finger. "I'm not finished. You see, while you've all been celebrating Nathan's brilliant plan to humiliate and destroy me, I've been doing a little planning of my own." I opened my purse again and pulled out a thick manila envelope, placing it next to the divorce papers Nathan had given me. "These are my divorce papers, Nathan, filed 3 days ago with the family court. Unlike yours, mine include some very interesting attachments." Thomas leaned forward, his face suddenly serious. "What kind of attachments?" "Well, let's see," I said, opening the envelope and spreading papers across the table. Bank statements showing Nathan's theft of marital assets to fund his affair, credit card applications he forged with my signature, email conversations between Nathan and Cassie planning to defraud me in divorce proceedings. Cassie's face had gone from confident to terrified. "You can't prove anything," she whispered. "Actually, I can." I pulled out my phone and scrolled through screenshots. "Here's an email from you to Nathan dated last month. Can't wait until that boring wife of yours is out of the picture. Make sure she doesn't get a penny." And here's Nathan's response. "Don't worry, baby. I've got it all figured out. She'll be lucky to keep her car." Brandon was backing his chair away from the table. "Look, Victoria, we didn't know—" "Oh, but you did know," I said, turning to face him. "You knew about the affair. You knew about the financial fraud, and you knew about Nathan's illegal business practices." The color drained from Thomas's face. What business practices? I smiled and pulled out another set of documents. The building code violations, Thomas. The bribed inspectors. The substandard materials you've been using in your construction projects. Did you really think no one would notice? Nathan was gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles were white. You can't prove any of that. Actually, I can. I've been in touch with the city building department, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the IRS. They're very interested in your business records, Nathan, especially the ones you thought you'd hidden so well. I stood up slowly, enjoying the look of panic spreading across their faces. You see, while you were all so busy planning my destruction, you forgot one very important thing. I'm not the helpless little wife you thought I was. I'm a marketing executive with a degree in business and a talent for research, and I've spent the last 6 months researching all of you. Cassie was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Nathan, you said this would be easy. You said she was stupid. I was never stupid, Cassie. I was just in love with a man who didn't exist. I looked directly at Nathan. The man I married was kind and honest, but that man was just an act, wasn't he? The real Nathan is sitting right here, a liar, a thief, and a fraud. Nathan finally found his voice. You can't do this to me, Victoria. I'll fight you. I'll make your life hell. No, Nathan, you won't. I picked up my phone and showed him the screen. Because while we've been talking, I've been live streaming this entire conversation to my social media accounts. Your friends, your family, your business associates. They're all watching right now. The blood drained from Nathan's face as he realized what I'd done. His reputation, his business, his future, all of it was crumbling in real time. Oh, and one more thing, I said, gathering my papers. The authorities will be at your office first thing Monday morning with search warrants. I'd suggest you spend the weekend finding a good criminal defense attorney. I picked up my purse and walked toward the restaurant exit, leaving them all sitting in stunned silence. 6 months later, I sat in my new apartment overlooking Central Park, sipping coffee and reading the morning news on my tablet. The headline made me smile. Sterling Development Company executive sentenced in fraud case. Nathan had gotten 3 years in federal prison. Thomas received 2 years. Brandon, who had cooperated with prosecutors, got 18 months probation. The company had been dissolved, their assets seized to pay back investors and victims of their construction fraud. But the real satisfaction wasn't in their punishment. It was in how completely their world had fallen apart after that night at Le Bernardin. The live stream had been viewed over 2 million times. Nathan's humiliation had gone viral, shared across social media with comments like, "This is what happens when you underestimate your wife," and "She played chess while he was playing checkers." The video had been picked up by news outlets as an example of divorce revenge done right. Within hours of the stream ending, Nathan's phone had been ringing nonstop. His mother, Patricia, called, screaming about the family's reputation. His business partners demanded explanations. Clients started canceling contracts. The carefully constructed image Nathan had spent years building crumbled in a single evening. Cassie had lost her job immediately. No law firm in the city would hire her after the scandal. Last I heard, she'd moved back to her hometown in Ohio, working at her father's insurance agency. The expensive jewelry Nathan had bought her was seized as evidence in the fraud case. The divorce proceedings had been swift and decisive. With all the evidence I'd gathered, Nathan's lawyers advised him to accept my terms rather than face additional criminal charges for perjury. I kept the house, most of our assets, and my dignity. Nathan kept his legal bills and his prison sentence. My phone buzzed with a text from James Morrison. "Saw the news about the sentencing. How are you feeling?" I typed back, "Like justice has been served." James had become more than just my attorney. He'd become a friend, someone who understood what I'd been through and respected how I'd handled it. We'd had dinner a few times, nothing romantic, just two people who'd found they enjoyed each other's company. My career had flourished too. The publicity from the divorce had actually helped my marketing firm. Clients were impressed by my strategic thinking and attention to detail. I'd been promoted to senior partner and was working on campaigns for major brands. But the best part was the peace. For the first time in years, I woke up each morning without anxiety, without wondering what lies I'd discover or what cruel surprise awaited me. My apartment was mine, decorated the way I wanted, filled with books and plants and artwork that made me happy. I'd also reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. Nathan had slowly isolated me from people who might have seen through his act. Now I had dinner parties and weekend trips and long conversations with women who understood what I'd been through. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was my sister calling from California. "Victoria, I just saw the news about Nathan's sentencing. How are you doing?" "I'm good, really good," I said, and meant it. "It feels like the final chapter of a very bad book." "I'm so proud of you," she said. "The way you handled everything, the way you fought back, Dad would have been so proud too." After we hung up, I walked to my window and looked out at the park. Couples were walking hand in hand, families were playing with their children, joggers were running past. Life was happening all around me, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was part of it instead of just watching from the sidelines. My laptop chimed with an email notification. It was from a publisher who'd been following my story. They wanted to know if I'd be interested in writing a book about my experience, a guide for women going through similar situations. I smiled and started typing my response. Maybe it was time to help other women who were living the nightmare I'd escaped. Maybe Nathan's cruelty could become something useful, something that could protect others from men like him. The woman who had signed those divorce papers 6 months ago was gone. In her place was someone stronger, smarter, and completely free. Nathan had tried to destroy me, but instead, he'd created his own worst enemy, and I was just getting started.